Have you ever been in a moment where words felt heavy, emotions raw, and every instinct screamed to respond, yet something inside whispered, "Stay quiet"? There's a strange power in silence, a strength that doesn't shout but resonates louder than any argument. Walking away in silence is not weakness, it is mastery over chaos, a declaration that your peace is more valuable than proving a point. In a world that often glorifies confrontation, those who choose to step back quietly are the ones who hold true control, not over others, but over themselves. Silence has a way of commanding attention without raising a voice. It allows reflection, preserves dignity, and shields our energy from unnecessary turmoil. Today, we will explore how choosing to walk away in silence can transform not just moments of conflict, but the way we navigate life itself with grace, strength, and clarity. Choosing inner strength over reaction is one of the most profound demonstrations of personal mastery, yet it is also one of the most challenging behaviors to cultivate. At its core, it requires the ability to pause before responding, to resist the instinctual drive to argue, defend, or retaliate, and instead to maintain composure in the face of provocation or conflict. The act of walking away in silence is not merely a physical movement. It is an internal process that involves acknowledging your emotions without letting them dictate your actions. When someone confronts you with anger, criticism, or manipulation, the immediate reaction is often to respond in kind, to assert your perspective, or to defend your integrity. However, such reactions can escalate the conflict, trap you in cycles of drama, and often leave you emotionally exhausted. Exercising restraint, on the other hand, demonstrates a quiet form of power that is rarely recognized but deeply effective. Inner strength begins with awareness. To walk away in silence, you must first recognize the triggers that provoke an emotional reaction. This involves a degree of self-reflection that allows you to see not only the external behavior of others, but also the internal impulses they awaken within you. You may feel anger, hurt, or frustration bubbling up, and the natural tendency is to release it outwardly. Choosing silence in that moment requires acknowledging these feelings without judgment and deciding not to let them control your actions. It is a deliberate choice to prioritize your long-term peace over immediate gratification or the perceived need to win a confrontation. This practice also cultivates emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and manage your own emotions while navigating the emotions of others. When you walk away silently, you are exercising control over your own emotional state while simultaneously altering the dynamics of the situation. Your silence can prevent others from escalating their anger because confrontation thrives on engagement. When engagement is withdrawn, the momentum of conflict diminishes. By choosing not to react impulsively, you demonstrate to yourself and others that you are capable of regulating your emotions and maintaining a sense of calm under pressure. This calmness is magnetic. It conveys confidence, stability, and maturity. People naturally notice when someone refuses to be baited into chaos, and often it inspires them to reflect on their own behavior. Another aspect of inner strength is the ability to separate your self-worth from external validation. In moments of provocation, it is easy to conflate disagreement, criticism, or hostility with a reflection of your value as a person. Those with inner strength understand that external forces do not define them. Walking away in silence embodies this understanding. It is a refusal to give power over your emotional state to someone else's words or actions. By maintaining composure, you signal that your sense of self is intact, regardless of how others choose to behave. This clarity fosters resilience, enabling you to navigate future challenges with greater confidence. Inner strength also requires patience and the capacity to delay gratification. Reacting immediately may feel satisfying, but it rarely yields meaningful results. Choosing silence and stepping away allows time for perspective and thoughtful consideration. It provides space to assess the situation, to determine whether engagement is necessary, and to approach decisions with a clearer mind. Over time, This practice reinforces a habit of deliberate action rather than reactive behavior. You train your mind to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally, and this discipline becomes a cornerstone of personal empowerment. Importantly, walking away in silence is not a form of avoidance or denial. It is not about pretending the conflict does not exist or suppressing your emotions indefinitely. Instead, it is a strategic and conscious act of self-preservation. By temporarily removing yourself from the immediate tension, you create an opportunity to process your feelings privately, to gather insights, and to choose your next step with intentionality. This approach allows for healthier engagement in the future, should it be necessary, and prevents the destructive patterns that often arise from unrestrained emotional reactions. Ultimately, inner strength manifests in the ability to maintain your composure, even when provoked, to honor your own values over the compulsion to argue, and to recognize that your peace is more valuable than any temporary victory in conflict. Walking away in silence is a visible and symbolic expression of that strength, a choice that demonstrates maturity, wisdom, and self-respect. It signals to the world and, most importantly, to yourself that you are not defined by external chaos, but by the integrity and resilience you cultivate within. Preserving dignity and energy is one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked, reasons to walk away in silence. Life presents countless situations where our emotions are tested, where words are hurled in anger, or where we are drawn into arguments that serve no constructive purpose. In such moments, reacting impulsively can feel justified, even necessary, but it comes at a cost both to our personal dignity and to our emotional and mental energy. Choosing to walk away in silence allows us to protect these invaluable resources. Dignity, in this context, is not simply a social facade, but an internal compass that reflects self-respect, moral grounding, and awareness of one's own worth. By refusing to engage in petty disputes, insults, or manipulations, we assert that our value is not contingent on someone else's behavior or opinions. Maintaining this sense of dignity requires discipline, but the benefits are far-reaching, influencing not just how others perceive us, but how we perceive ourselves. Walking away in silence helps preserve energy because emotional engagement in conflict is inherently draining. When we argue or defend ourselves, we expend mental and emotional resources on stress, worry, and the effort to convince someone else of our perspective. Often, these efforts yield little to no meaningful resolution, especially when the other party is unwilling to listen or is motivated by ego, anger, or control. Every word spoken in frustration or retaliation is energy taken from other pursuits, creative work, personal growth, meaningful relationships, or self-care. By choosing silence, we conserve this energy, redirecting it toward endeavors that truly enrich our lives. This act of restraint is not passive. It is an active decision to prioritize well, being over the temporary satisfaction of winning a verbal exchange or proving a point. It is an acknowledgement that our emotional bandwidth is finite and that how we choose to use it has long-term consequences. Moreover, preserving dignity through silence influences the social dynamics around us. Reacting impulsively, particularly in anger or hurt, can escalate situations and lead to regret or damage to relationships. Words spoken in the heat of the moment often cannot be unsaid, and the fallout can compromise both our reputation and our self-image. By stepping back quietly, we avoid entangling ourselves in unnecessary conflict and demonstrate a level of self-control that commands respect. Silence in the face of provocation communicates strength, not weakness. It shows that we are secure enough in our identity to refrain from proving ourselves to those who may not understand or value our perspective. In essence, maintaining dignity in silence creates a boundary, a clear signal that we refuse to be diminished by negativity or hostility. Walking away also grants the opportunity for reflection, which further reinforces both dignity and energy preservation. When we remove ourselves from a charged situation, we gain the space to process our emotions, analyze the circumstances objectively, and consider whether engagement is necessary or productive. This reflective pause allows for deliberate decision making rather than reactive behavior. It ensures that any subsequent action is rooted in intention and alignment with our principles rather than being a knee-jerk reaction driven by temporary emotional states. The act of stepping away quietly, therefore, is not merely defensive. It is a proactive strategy for safeguarding our mental clarity and emotional equilibrium. Another aspect of preserving dignity and energy is recognizing the futility of certain conflicts. Not every disagreement, insult, or challenge deserves a response. Many confrontations are less about truth or resolution and more about ego, power, or the need to provoke. Engaging in these situations consumes energy that could be better invested elsewhere. Walking away in silence is a conscious acknowledgement that our time and attention are too valuable to squander on battles that yield no meaningful outcome. This discernment requires emotional maturity as it involves assessing not just the immediate situation, but also the long-term impact on our peace of mind and personal growth. Additionally, the act of silently walking away can prevent long-term emotional residue. Engaging in conflict often leaves lingering stress, resentment, or guilt, even if the dispute seems minor at the time. By choosing silence, we reduce the chances of carrying unnecessary emotional baggage. Protecting our energy in this way allows us to approach future challenges with a clearer mind and a lighter heart. The preservation of dignity ensures that we retain self-respect and confidence, rather than compromising our integrity in the heat of a fleeting argument. Finally, preserving dignity and energy through silence cultivates resilience. It teaches that we do not need external validation to maintain our sense of worth, and that we can navigate adversity without compromising our values. Each time we choose silence over reaction, we reinforce our ability to remain composed under pressure, to prioritize what truly matters, and to protect ourselves from the emotional drain of unnecessary conflict. Walking away in silence becomes a statement of self-empowerment, a deliberate choice to honor ourselves, conserve our strength, and approach life with clarity, confidence, and unwavering self-respect. Avoiding escalation is one of the most critical reasons to embrace the practice of walking away in silence. Conflict, by its very nature, has a tendency to intensify when met with immediate emotional reactions, especially in moments of anger, frustration, or hurt. When we respond impulsively to provocation, even with what seems like a measured rebuttal, we often contribute to a feedback loop in which each party's emotions escalate. Words can be misinterpreted, tone can inflame, and intentions can be questioned, creating a spiral that can quickly turn minor disagreements into full-blown confrontations. Choosing silence and walking away interrupts this cycle, depriving the situation of reactive fuel. By refusing to engage in the heat of the moment, we remove the momentum that typically drives conflicts to more extreme levels, preventing small sparks from igniting into destructive fires. Walking away in silence is not a sign of avoidance or weakness, but a strategic approach to conflict management. In emotionally charged interactions, the brain is often flooded with stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol, which can impair rational thinking and increase impulsivity. Reacting in these states can lead to statements or actions that are later regretted. When we step back silently, we allow our nervous system to regain equilibrium, giving space for reflection and measured decision-making. This pause enables us to assess the situation with clarity, evaluate potential consequences, and determine whether engagement is necessary or productive. It transforms reactive energy into deliberate action, allowing us to respond from a place of control rather than compulsion. Another dimension of avoiding escalation through silence is the psychological effect it has on the other party. When someone is seeking a reaction, they are often looking for validation, confrontation, or acknowledgement of their provocation. Choosing silence denies them the immediate gratification of a response and can encourage self-reflection. A person who expects an argument may suddenly find themselves confronted with calm composure, a subtle but powerful form of influence. In this way, silence not only protects our own emotional state, but can also de-escalate tension on the other side, creating a space for reason rather than continuing antagonism. It communicates that we will not be drawn into unnecessary conflict, signaling maturity and emotional resilience. Avoiding escalation also protects relationships. In many personal, professional, and social contexts, conflicts can have lasting consequences. Heated arguments can leave residual resentment, erode trust, and damage connections that took years to build. Responding with silence and walking away helps to maintain the integrity of these relationships by preventing words or actions that might irreversibly harm them. By not fueling the fire, we preserve the possibility for future dialogue when emotions have cooled, ensuring that conversations can occur constructively rather than destructively. This approach reflects an understanding that not all battles are worth fighting in the heat of the moment, and that some situations benefit more from patience and measured response than from immediate engagement. Moreover, avoiding escalation through silence allows for greater perspective. Walking away creates physical and mental distance, providing an opportunity to evaluate the broader context of the conflict. Often, disputes seem more significant in the immediacy of emotional engagement than they do when viewed from a calm, reflective standpoint. By stepping back, we can discern which issues are genuinely important, which are rooted in misunderstanding, and which are the result of momentary frustration or ego-driven impulses. This broader perspective prevents unnecessary entanglement in trivial disputes and allows us to allocate our attention and energy to matters that truly require it. It encourages a long-term view of harmony and personal well-being over short-term reactive satisfaction. The ability to avoid escalation also strengthens self-regulation and emotional discipline. Each time we choose silence over engagement in a potentially volatile situation, we exercise control over our impulses and demonstrate mastery over our emotions. This repeated practice gradually builds resilience, making it easier to navigate future conflicts without succumbing to the same patterns of reactivity. In essence, the act of walking away becomes a form of training the mind, reinforcing the habit of measured response and teaching that emotional composure is a more effective tool than confrontation in maintaining stability and harmony. Finally, the choice to avoid escalation through silence preserves the dignity of all parties involved. Conflict often leads to verbal or emotional exchanges that can degrade individuals, erode mutual respect, and inflame animosity. Walking away in quiet composure ensures that interactions do not descend into demeaning or destructive territory. It is a way to uphold personal values and maintain ethical conduct even under provocation, demonstrating that true strength lies not in overpowering others with words or aggression, but in controlling oneself and fostering calm in the midst of potential chaos. Avoiding escalation is, therefore, not just a tactical choice, but a reflection of wisdom, maturity, and long-term vision. Self-reflection and clarity are essential components of personal growth, and walking away in silence provides a unique opportunity to cultivate both. In our fast-paced, conflict-driven world, it is all too easy to become consumed by immediate reactions and emotional impulses. Arguments, disagreements, or tense situations often demand instant responses, which can cloud judgment and escalate tension. By choosing to walk away quietly, we create a pause, a deliberate interruption in the flow of interaction that allows the mind to step back and observe without immediate interference. This pause is not emptiness or avoidance. It is an intentional act of creating mental space in which reflection can occur. During this time, we are able to examine not only the external circumstances that provoked the conflict, but also our internal responses, gaining insight into why we feel anger, frustration, or hurt. The act of silent withdrawal becomes a vehicle for self-awareness, providing clarity on what truly matters and what may be inconsequential. When we engage in self-reflection during moments of withdrawal, we begin to understand our emotional triggers and patterns of behavior. Human reactions are often conditioned by past experiences, personal insecurities, or unresolved issues, and these undercurrents can amplify conflict if left unexamined. Walking away in silence gives us the space to analyze these internal currents without the pressure of defending or reacting. For example, in a heated discussion, a comment may trigger a disproportionate emotional response because it resonates with an old fear or unresolved grievance. By stepping away, we remove ourselves from the immediate chaos and create a reflective distance in which we can identify the source of our emotional intensity. This clarity allows us to respond in future situations with greater understanding, ensuring that our actions are guided by thought rather than reaction. Clarity emerges not only from understanding our emotions, but also from reassessing the situation itself. Conflicts are rarely as simple as they appear in the moment. Miscommunication, assumptions, and incomplete information often contribute to misunderstandings that seem more severe than they truly are. Walking away in silence allows us to disentangle these elements, enabling a clearer perspective on what is happening and what is worth addressing. This distance fosters rationality, allowing us to distinguish between issues that merit our energy and those that are trivial or irrelevant. The clarity gained through such reflection reduces the likelihood of rash decisions, helps us prioritize effectively, and ensures that our actions align with our values and long-term goals. Self-reflection also facilitates a deeper understanding of the other person's perspective. In conflicts, we are often so focused on defending ourselves that we fail to consider the motivations, emotions, and experiences of the other party. Walking away in silence creates an opportunity to step outside our own emotional bubble and consider why the other person may be acting as they are. This does not mean excusing harmful behavior, but it does enable us to approach interactions with empathy and a more nuanced understanding. By reflecting in silence, we are better equipped to respond in ways that are constructive rather than reactive, reducing the chances of perpetuating cycles of conflict and misunderstanding. The clarity that comes from self-reflection also impacts decision-making beyond the immediate conflict. When we take the time to process our thoughts and emotions in silence, we gain insight into our priorities, boundaries, and values. This understanding guides us in determining whether engagement is necessary, what approach to take, or whether disengagement is the most appropriate course. Walking away, therefore, is not a passive act but a strategic one, allowing decisions to be rooted in conscious choice rather than emotional compulsion. It cultivates a sense of agency, reinforcing the understanding that we are responsible for our responses and the outcomes that follow. Additionally, self-reflection and clarity foster long-term emotional resilience. By regularly practicing the act of stepping back, observing, and analyzing our reactions, we strengthen our ability to remain composed in future conflicts. This repeated practice builds mental and emotional fortitude, making it easier to navigate challenges without being overwhelmed. Over time, we learn to approach difficulties with calmness, discernment, and patience, drawing on the lessons gained through previous moments of quiet reflection. The act of walking away becomes a tool for personal growth, enabling us to refine our emotional intelligence and deepen our understanding of ourselves and others. Finally, walking away in silence to engage in self-reflection promotes inner peace, the ability to process emotions thoughtfully, to gain clarity on both internal and external circumstances, and to make conscious decisions about engagement reduces stress and anxiety. It nurtures a sense of control and stability, allowing us to face life's challenges with a measured and grounded approach. Through this practice, self-reflection and clarity become intertwined with personal empowerment, guiding us toward wiser choices, stronger relationships, and a life navigated with purpose and intention. Demonstrating boundaries is one of the most profound effects of walking away in silence, and it represents a critical aspect of personal empowerment. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what is acceptable and unacceptable in our interactions with others. They protect our emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical well-being, establishing a framework for respectful and healthy relationships. Many people struggle to assert boundaries because doing so can provoke confrontation, guilt, or discomfort, especially when dealing with individuals who are used to overstepping limits or demanding more than what is reasonable. Walking away in silence is a powerful, non-confrontational way to assert those limits. It communicates without words that there are lines that cannot be crossed and that your peace, dignity, and self-respect are non-negotiable. In this sense, silence becomes a form of communication that transcends argument or explanation, carrying an unmistakable message of personal strength. The act of silently withdrawing signals that one's energy and attention are valuable commodities, not to be squandered on conflict, manipulation, or negativity. When we walk away, we are effectively saying that we will not compromise our mental or emotional stability to engage with harmful behavior. This demonstrates a high level of self-respect, which in turn commands respect from others. People often underestimate the communicative power of silence. It is not empty or passive, but deliberate and intentional. It sets a clear boundary without needing to justify or argue the position. In situations where confrontation could escalate tension or invite manipulation, walking away ensures that boundaries are preserved without fueling further conflict. It shows that maintaining integrity is more important than winning a dispute or gaining approval, reinforcing the principle that personal boundaries are rooted in self-worth rather than external validation. Boundaries maintained through silence are particularly effective in situations involving toxic or controlling individuals. Many manipulative people rely on provoking emotional reactions to maintain influence over others. Responding impulsively to provocation gives them exactly what they seek, a sense of control over your emotions and decisions. By choosing silence and walking away, you deny them that power. This simple act establishes a psychological boundary that is both firm and unyielding. It communicates that their attempts to manipulate or provoke you are ineffective because you are in control of your response. Over time, consistently maintaining these boundaries through non-reactive behavior strengthens your ability to resist manipulation, fosters autonomy, and builds emotional resilience. Moreover, demonstrating boundaries through walking away in silence helps cultivate clarity in relationships. When we choose to step back instead of engaging in futile conflict, we allow both parties to observe the limits of acceptable behavior. Silence in this context is instructive. It shows others where respect is expected and where overstepping consequences exist. It also allows us to evaluate which relationships are healthy and which are toxic. Some interactions may repeatedly challenge our boundaries, signaling a mismatch of values or mutual respect. By quietly enforcing limits, we create the space to reassess these connections and make informed decisions about whether continued engagement is worthwhile or detrimental to our well-being. This form of boundary setting is subtle yet profoundly effective, as it communicates expectations without verbal confrontation or aggression. Walking away also reinforces boundaries internally, not just externally. By choosing to disengage in situations that compromise our peace, we train ourselves to prioritize self-care and uphold our principles consistently. This internal discipline strengthens self-esteem and fosters confidence in decision-making. It becomes a reminder that our well-being is our responsibility and that we do not need to compromise our values or tolerate mistreatment to maintain relationships, social approval, or harmony. Over time, this practice creates a feedback loop in which asserting boundaries becomes instinctive rather than difficult, reinforcing a lifestyle in which respect for self and others is paramount. Boundaries demonstrated through silence also encourage accountability in others. When words are removed from the equation, actions and reactions become more noticeable. People begin to recognize that attempts to manipulate, pressure, or provoke will not succeed, and this often leads to changes in behavior. Silence, paired with withdrawal, can be more impactful than confrontation because it leaves no room for negotiation or justification. It simply reflects a steadfast commitment to self-respect. Others are compelled to recognize and honor the boundary, fostering healthier interactions and mutual respect over time. Finally, Walking away in silence communicates that personal boundaries are not optional or negotiable. They are integral to one's identity and self respect. It demonstrates that one's mental and emotional space is sacred and that maintaining it is a non negotiable priority. This form of boundary setting is empowering because it does not rely on conflict or argument to assert limits. It relies on the strength of self awareness, courage, and consistent practice. By walking away quietly, we show that boundaries are lived principles, not theoretical ideals, and that protecting them is a vital aspect of leading a balanced, dignified, and empowered life. The power of example and influence is one of the most subtle yet profound effects of walking away in silence. Human interactions are often driven by the expectation of reaction. When someone behaves aggressively, manipulatively, or provocatively, the social script dictates that a response is necessary. Most people react impulsively, believing that engagement is the only path to resolution, validation, or control. However, choosing to walk away quietly challenges this assumption in a way that is both powerful and instructive. By refusing to react, you demonstrate an alternative approach, one rooted in composure, self-respect, and intentionality. This form of influence does not rely on words, persuasion, or confrontation. It is modeled through action, showing that strength and control can be exercised without aggression or debate. In this sense, silence becomes a teaching tool, illustrating that emotional intelligence and personal mastery are often more effective than any verbal argument or display of force. Walking away in silence communicates a standard of behavior to others without needing explanation. When someone provokes or challenges you, their expectations often include eliciting a visible response. By breaking this cycle, you create a quiet yet compelling demonstration of self-control and dignity. Others observe your refusal to engage, and even if unspoken, the lesson is clear: not every situation demands a reaction, and not every provocation warrants participation. This modeled behavior can be profoundly influential, particularly in environments where impulsive reactions are the norm. People often mirror the behavior they witness, and by consistently choosing silence and withdrawal over confrontation, you can subtly encourage others to adopt a more measured and thoughtful approach to conflicts or disagreements. Your actions provide a live example of restraint and strategic decision making that can inspire reflection and behavioral change. Influence through silence also extends to fostering introspection in others. When a person expects a response and is met instead with quiet withdrawal, it can trigger self-examination. They may begin to question the purpose of their behavior, their motives, or the impact of their words. This indirect form of influence is often more effective than confrontation because it bypasses defensiveness. When someone is confronted with a reaction, their natural response may be to justify, rationalize, or retaliate, which can reinforce negative patterns. Silence, however, creates a space in which the other party must reckon with the absence of reaction, which can lead to greater self-awareness and a reconsideration of their actions. In this way, walking away in silence does not merely protect you, it has the potential to promote growth and reflection in others as well. Furthermore, the power of example lies in demonstrating an alternative approach to conflict resolution and emotional management. Many people equate power with aggression, dominance, or verbal skill, but silence reveals that true strength often lies in control, patience, and strategic withdrawal. By embodying these qualities, you set a standard for what composed and mature behavior looks like. This example can be particularly impactful in professional, familial, or social settings where emotional volatility is common. Others begin to recognize that calm, deliberate responses carry more authority and credibility than reactive engagement, which can escalate tension and diminish respect. Walking away silently becomes a living lesson in the efficacy of emotional intelligence over impulsivity, teaching by demonstration rather than instruction. The influence of silent withdrawal also encourages a culture of respect and accountability. When you refuse to be drawn into conflict unnecessarily, it sends a subtle but unmistakable signal that manipulative, aggressive, or disrespectful behavior will not achieve its intended effect. Over time, this can shape the behavior of those around you, fostering more mindful interactions and promoting healthier social dynamics. By consistently modeling composure, resilience, and self-control, you contribute to a collective understanding that emotional mastery and personal integrity are valuable and influential qualities. This kind of leadership is quietly transformative. It does not rely on authority or power structures, but instead on the credibility and consistency of one's actions. Additionally, the power of example through silence extends to long-term personal influence. People often remember how someone made them feel or how they handled difficult situations, rather than the specific words spoken. By consistently demonstrating restraint and composure, you leave an enduring impression that can shape perceptions and interactions for years to come. Your silent response becomes a benchmark against which others measure their own behavior, subtly reinforcing the values of patience, wisdom, and dignity. This enduring influence underscores the idea that actions often resonate more deeply than words, especially when those actions embody principles of self-respect and emotional intelligence. Finally, walking away in silence embodies the principle that influence does not require domination, argument, or vocal assertion. It is a quiet, strategic form of leadership that communicates strength, clarity, and integrity. By modeling restraint, self-control, and intentional behavior, you demonstrate to others that there is power in measured action and that silence can carry as much, if not more, authority than words. The example you set through this practice can ripple outward, shaping behaviors, encouraging reflection, and fostering respect in ways that are subtle, lasting, and profoundly effective. Silence becomes not just a personal strategy, but a tool of influence, teaching by demonstration and showing that true power often lies in composure, discretion, and thoughtful withdrawal. In a world that often celebrates loud voices, immediate reactions, and visible displays of strength, the power of walking away in silence stands as a quiet rebellion, a testament to self-control, dignity, and emotional intelligence. Choosing silence is not weakness, avoidance, or indifference. It is a deliberate act of inner strength, a commitment to preserve one's energy, protect personal boundaries, and maintain clarity in the midst of chaos. Walking away allows us to avoid escalation, reflect on our emotions, and make conscious decisions rooted in our values, rather than impulsive reactions. It demonstrates boundaries without aggression, influences others through example, and cultivates resilience that endures beyond the immediate moment. By embracing the art of silent withdrawal, we affirm that true power lies not in confrontation, but in the mastery of oneself, in the courage to prioritize peace over provocation, and in the wisdom to know when to step back. In silence, we find strength, clarity, and freedom,